I thought we'd take a walk today and talk about how I got property in Boston for free. Okay, well, the property itself wasn't free. I did spend money to build it, but the land under it was free. I know you're wondering, how the heck did you get property for free? I'm going to tell you about that today. Well, it all started back in 2014 when I bought a two-family property and renovated it top to bottom. After we were done renovating, my then fiance Shelby and I moved into the top 2 floors, just like we talked about in the other episode, reducing our mortgage by renting out the first floor. I know you're wondering, what does this two-family have to do with the property that I got for free? Well, we're getting to that. When I purchased that two-family, it actually came with some additional land. Now, to most looking at that, they only saw that land as additional parking and maybe some yard space for the two-family. But upon closer observation, you would see that that property was actually taxed separately. So that land was actually treated by the city as a separate property. Now, that meant that it was crying out for something to be done with it. Well, after Shelby and I had settled into the property for a few months, we decided to turn our attention to that vacant piece of land. Well, this next part actually requires a little bit more information about how a mortgage works. So I'm going to tell you more about that first. A mortgage is a loan from a financial institution or a lender helping you finance the purchase of your home. The home is actually used as collateral, meaning that if you don't pay under the terms of the mortgage, paying your interest and paying your principal on time, the bank can actually take the property from you. So understanding that the mortgage that we had covered both the two-family as well as the vacant land, you can see that I had to approach our lender with some kind of proposal. So I proposed to my lender that we separate the land from the two-family property through what's called a partial release. So knowing that the collateral for the mortgage was the two-family and the piece of land, I was proposing that they separate the two and only keep their mortgage covering the two-family instead of both pieces of property. Now, if they would allow this to happen, that would mean that I would own the land free and clear, meaning without a mortgage. So I pitched to my lender that releasing the land would have no impact on the value of their collateral or the property securing the mortgage. Well, they did an appraisal of the two-family, and it turned out they agreed with me. So some paperwork and a couple weeks later, and I was the proud owner of a piece of land in a prime real estate market with no mortgage. The possibilities were endless. We've actually been walking to the property that I've been talking about. Thought I'd show it to you. So check out my channel so that you can learn more about how I permitted this property that stands here now, and actually just appraised for $1.1 million, and how you can create passive income just like me. Hey everybody, so I'm here again with Shelby, my wife. She tends to have a lot of real estate questions, just like some of you out there. So some of these might overlap with what you have on your mind. We just got done watching the rough cut of our free property episode together, and she's going to ask some of the questions.
Yeah, thank you. So after watching your episode, which I loved by the way, one of the first questions I had was that you mentioned you got this property in one of the hottest markets. Was the market so-called hot when you purchased the property? And how do you define a hot market versus a lower barrier to entry market?
Yeah, I would say that the market was hot in 2014-15 when we first purchased the property. I think that it was overlooked for a number of reasons, and it just took a little bit of creativity to make the numbers work. And I think we looked at it a little bit differently than other people that might have seen it. So sorry, what was that second part of the question?
Yeah, so how would you define a hot market versus a lower barrier to entry market?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different ways to define what makes a market hot, and I don't think that we are necessarily going to enumerate on all of them today, but a lot of it has to do with the time that it takes a property sitting on the market from the time that it's listed to a time that it has 1, 2, 3, or multiple offers. So that can be anywhere from a day to 5 days. I wouldn't define anything longer than a week as a hot market. Okay. It has to do with multiple offers being over the asking price. So in terms of properties being bid up, that also makes a market hot. So it's price, it's time on the market, it's available inventory versus the number of buyers, so supply and demand. So having greater demand or greater number of buyers than the supply that's available makes a market hot.
So does that also then define, speaking to that, does that also define what a lower barrier to entry market would be? A market that lacks those things? Or is there such thing as a cool market but still a high barrier to entry?
So let me take those two parts. So a lower barrier to entry market does not necessarily mean that it's not a hot market. A lower barrier to entry market could still be hot just because there might be additional demand for those properties. But the price or the value of those properties still could be low enough such that it affords people the opportunity to buy into it, making it a lower barrier to entry market. So barrier to entry has a lot more to do with price and property value than it does the heat of the market or how competitive it is.
Did you know that the land was taxed as a separate parcel before or after you bought the multifamily?
Yeah, so actually, as part of your first question, as I was talking about how we creatively looked at it and came up with a game plan for how we were going to make the numbers work on this property, that was part of my strategy. So I did do all of the research before we purchased the property to understand that, we weren't just buying a two-family with land that was part of that two-family. We looked at it and understood that the two-family was already separate from the land. So that was part of the due diligence early on.
Okay, awesome. Those are all the questions that I had. I appreciate your time. Until next time, bringing it to you.
Until next time, bringing it to you, Burns Realty. Until next time, Adam Burns bringing it to you.
There you go.
I don't know. You can use
that
one of those.
works. One of those.